Okay, we are ready. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us when and why you started playing Eve?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Gustav Mannfred. I started playing Eve in March 2009, and I started playing because I found this game very interesting and it also looked very interesting. I don't know remember exactly how I came to Eve, but I think I saw some ads on Steam or any other gaming website or whatever, and that's how I came into this game. It was actually just around the time when Wormholes just came out.
Oh, wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
So, you're running for CSM19. Can you tell me three of your campaign points?
Yeah, also the first one is to bring back the proving grounds as well as the old arena. The second one is to fight botting and real money trade. And the third one is ships, module, and ecosystem balance.
Okay, those are very noble points. So, Eve Rookies is a new player oriented community, and new players are very important to us because they're kind of our lifeblood. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing new players coming into Eve today?
I think some big challenge is the complexity of the game because many mechanics are really complex. For example, if you just look at industry, manufacturing, and you have to know so much to do it efficiently and so on. Then also PvE can be complex in some cases, like you have to know everything, the fitting, your ship, what skills you need, and so on. Then there
Okay.
are,
Oh, go ahead.
then there are some other stuffs that can be complex, and what also is complex and was actually something when I started playing is actually to find something to do.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. So, what do you think would keep new players in the game?
I think the what will keep new players in the game is actually an improved and more in-depth tutorial, as well as some sort of what also could be an idea is maybe some AI tools where player can ask a question and the tool would give answers. I think some websites have similar tools. Maybe if that's possible in Eve, instead of writing to the customer support where it usually takes days to get an answer on the question.
Could you imagine Ara who answers any question that you give her?
Yeah, that would be fun and actually something cool.
I think so. So, when is the last time that you actually ran the new player tutorial?
Actually, it was in 2010 when I made this character here, when I got some, I think the commissioned officer edition, it was back then, that gave you that cerebral accelerator that gives like 20% damage bonus, and the Echelon frigate, which came newly out around that time. I think
Oh,
it's 2010.
okay. So, you'll be happy to know that about 2.5 years ago, CCP did put out a new version of the NPE, and it does a pretty okay job compared to when you started playing. It's not the end all be all. We don't have AI Ara, but it's pretty decent. So moving on, community is super important to Eve. What is your definition of community?
Actually, the community in case of Eve, it's actually all the players and CCP.
Okay. Who do you consider your community?
I mean, in my case, actually, everyone that watches my streams and videos, all of those people.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about during these interviews is toxicity. And toxicity is being defined in this case as not PvP, not ganking, not killing off a new player, or any of the, salt that is mined between different groups. It's the racism and discrimination, sexism, and all the real life stuff. Do you, since you've been playing for a while, do you think that type of toxicity is better or worse than before?
I think it has, also toxicity in general has always been an issue in game, and CCP actually did some stuff like they changed their policy on real life threats and harassment a few years ago to punish it harder.
Okay.
But I'm not really aware on exact cases like that. Like in my case, I have never been victim of such behavior.
Well, that's good to hear. I absolutely hate it when anyone is a victim of that behavior. Um, if you were to run across that in game, what do you think you would do?
Well, that depends where it is. If it's in game, like per email in a chat channel, if it's a lighter case, then I would actually ask that person to stop it, or if I have the rights to do, then remove it from the said channel. If it's a more severe case, then probably the way is to write a support ticket and report that person.
Okay. That is absolutely the right move. Now, I have a crystal ball. I see that you got onto CSM19. Congratulations. But you're now in your first meeting, and you get to find out what they have planned for the next year, year and a half. Nothing that you're really an expert on, or nothing that you campaigned for, is going to be included in expansions or updates. What do you think you're going to do?
Well, if that's the case, then I would still try my best and help CCP with that stuff, that it gets implemented the right way and so on. But I think it's very unlikely that this is the case, because then it would be an expansion focusing fully on stuff like the ESI thing used for third-party tools or industry and so on.
Okay. And then, of course, you know that if you've played Eve long enough, CCP is going to start touching things that you like doing. So let's say that they decide to nerf something that you and your community care about, or take it out of the game completely. But it's actually for the better of the game. What do you think you're going to do?
And it also depends like how hard it hits me and the community. If it's more smaller stuff like ship balance, like nerfing a specific ship that I use a lot, like it was the case earlier this year with the Ikki-Turso, where the entropic disintegrators got nerfed, then be it like that, then we have to adopt. But if it's a harder thing, like for example removing the abyss, then I would actually do all to make CCP keep that stuff in the game, if it's something like that.
Okay. And then sometimes other players think that the CSM are there to force CCP to make changes or demand that they fix certain issues. Have you thought about how you're going to balance the limitations placed on you as CSM with making sure that players feel heard?
Yeah, that what I can do is that if there is like an official announcement, like a dev blog or a forum post where they talk about specific change, then if I'm allowed to, can write into the comments that, hey, look, this idea and this is inspired by me. I brought this up like that, and they implemented it. I would do that if I'm allowed. And other than that, if people would bring stuff up to me to forward it to CCP, then I tell them, hey, yes, I have brought them to their attention. But yeah, that also depends like how strict that NDA is. If I even can tell, hey, I brought that up to CCP and so on, and or that I'm even allowed to tell, hey, like this is inspired by me or other CSM members and so on.
Okay. Then we have a few questions from my community that I've been putting towards CSM candidates. One of them is about multi-boxing. So half of my community are multi-boxers. They really love doing home fronts solo with their 5 boxes or maybe incursions or mining. And the other thinks that we should have one account and one account only. Where's your stance?
I think multi-boxing is actually not bad as long as it actually is done healthy, like no input broadcasting and no botting. Multi-boxing people are people that actually pay for multiple accounts because you need Omega. That means CCP makes more money out of that. So from a business perspective for CCP, a good thing because it means more money. But when it starts getting into input broadcasting or botting, then it can become a problem. And if it's a problem, then the solution will not be like to ban multi-boxing. It will be rather to rework the content that is input broadcasted, that it becomes harder to do that.
So, when we were talking about your platform as CSM, you had mentioned that you want to help deal with RMT and input broadcasting. How do you imagine that you're going to be able to do this?
Yeah, I think how I would do this is to actually talk with the security team. Like if there's a meeting with the team, like tell them, hey, like look at this and this, and there are bots, there needs to be something done about it. And also report them in-game and tell them, hey, like I and some other have reported bots in that area of space over and over again, the same people over and over again. Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
that's all what I wanted to say.
So it looks like a couple people in Twitch chat are talking about Proving Grounds, which you had also mentioned that you would like to bring
Yeah.
back. Um, what So, to be the most effective CSM, when CCP makes a big change like that, it's usually to bring data. What kind of data are you going to bring to CCP saying that, hey, this is why you need to bring Proving Grounds back?
I think one important source of data that I think we're talking about data that is accessible to normal players, not like CCP internal data.
Correct.
That's actually like they could join the Abyssal Lurker Discord. There we have a channel that was focused about the proving rounds, and then they could scroll all the way up and read like here and there, like, hey, we want that stuff back. Then they can also watch a few streamers. Like there were like it's not only me that wants it back. Some other content creator also want it back. Check the forums, check Reddit. There it also comes up over and over again.
So then, how do you think you're going to react when you find out why it's no longer in game? Um, are you going to try to figure out a way to still convince them, or are you going to accept their reasoning?
I think we will still try to figure out a way to convince them to bring it back.
Okay. Um, so then another question I have is about skill injectors. Kind of like multi-boxing, my community is a little bit split on them. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think the skill injector actually solve an issue when starting EVE is because to achieve something it takes months or even years. Like to fly like a Marauder or so efficiently, we need like 1 or 2 years to get the skills for the Marauder and all the modules that you want, as well as all the support skills. and the skills injector actually allow you to achieve those goals much faster, like that you don't have to wait 1 or 2 years until you can fly a Marauder.
Okay. Some of the suggestions that I've heard over the past year have been just to give new players the Magic 14 up to 5. What do you think about that?
Actually, that sounds like a very good idea, because the Magic 14 are in every tutorial, every guide, like the first skills that you want to max out. And I think letting new players already start out with those skills at max, that's actually a good idea, because then they have already the best possible stats for the ships.
Okay. And then, out of everything that we've talked about so far, both here in the interview, maybe your other interviews, what do you think is the absolute most pressing issue in EVE today?
I think it's mainly botting and the insane ISK generation in Potch when.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, botting, I think we talked about before, like if you think about botting, it's not only just null sec with those Ishtar threading, it's also in low sec and high sec, like faction warfare. I've actually doing some PvP streams in the past, and like half of the people in the Plex, they immediately warp out when you enter the site. And there it's often very clear that those aren't real players, because their character names are obvious and things like that. And in Podgen, it's actually, from what I read on Reddit and the forums and so on, as far as I read, it's like a small group of players that make extreme amount of ISK from those flashpoint sites or whatever they are called.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you would like to talk about? And before you start, chat, if you have any questions for Gustav, then now's the time to start typing. So, do you have anything that we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to talk about?
And I think we've mentioned all, or maybe what I could also say in regards to the proving grounds is that this also includes the old arena, which was a second gate in the last room of the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
It was introduced in 2018 with the Onslaught expansion. It is what we had before the proving grounds.
Okay. In addition to the proving ground, do you think that they should bring back Sissy?
Sissy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would actually be a very good idea. Like it has, like, because with Sissy you can actually give more players the ability to test expansion stuff before and report bugs and stuff like that. I really think, like, since CC is down, that there were much more bugs after a new expansion when it came out, and before it was much less, because people could actually report those bugs before they even made it into TQ.
Okay. I do have a couple questions for you from chat. First one is, what about high sec ganking measures? Any opinions on that? For example, why doesn't NPC stations have tethers like player structures? Isn't that intentionally causing more opportunities for griefing?
I think ISEC ganking, also I must say in general, ganking is actually part of the game, and it has always been. What is actually the problem is that the consequences for doing ganking, they are actually not that much, especially since the Crime Watch changed in around 2012, and since you can buy back your security status with tax. Like if you look back, like in 2011, if you ganked someone, you got a much bigger security status hit when destroying another ship, and getting your security status back up was a lot harder.
Okay, and the next question is, I'm curious if you would prefer the Proving Grounds to be back as permanent, always open thing, or limited time event, same as before.
I think what I would say, also before we had Proving Grounds events usually every 2 weekends, and a little bit more during special case, like the Alliance tournament used to have special theme Proving Grounds, or the events like the Crimson Harvest. I think in case of the events, it should be limited time, and the old arena that was in the Abyss should be permanent, because there it's just a second gate that you can take or cannot take. And with the events, because there you actually queue up, and there you actually want to have some people that do it. And then with the limited times, and CCP can make some news item, announce it like everywhere, and from Twitter to Instagram that, hey, on this weekend there are Proving Rounds, and so
Okay.
on.
So then the next question is, without having to name other candidates, what kind of composition would you like to see on the CSM with regards to areas of expertise?
Okay, actually, with CSM in the past, it was actually always very null block focused. I think it would be nice to have a CSM composition that wouldn't be like more than half of them being from null block. It would actually be cool if there are people from any area of space and from any area of expertise. Like it would be cool if there like 1 or 2 from industry, a few from PvE, a few from PvP, and some other stuff. And also from the base, like it would be okay if like 1 or 2 from null, but also some from high sec, low sec, wormhole space, Podschwen. Actually having a very diverse CSM and not just focused on one part of the game or one area of space.
Okay, so next question is, how is high-sec ganking part of the game, but Ishtar farming is ruining the game?
It actually depends where those Ishtars, or I think that would actually mean some changes to nullsec. I think there could actually be some changes to make ganking in high-sec harder and more punitive, like, or even giving it a role, like it was the case with Vortex a few years ago, because there was also the same problem that you could Vortex every new player corporation and just gank them wherever you want. And I think ganking needs like a similar treatment.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think with ganking, like there should also be like more measures to like clearly say people like, hey, there are ganking is part of the game. Like it should also be included in the tutorial, the new player experience, that they know like very early that this can happen when you bring, like if you haul like 5 billion of stuff, then there is the chance that someone wants to gank.
That is actually kind of an interesting idea. I do think that situational awareness, that's something that players are forced to learn right now, and they kind of have to learn the hard way by dying first. So it's just a comment, but it's an interesting one, and I'd like to know what you think about it. Is if tags weren't a thing, people would just inject fresh catalyst characters. Do you think that that's what they would do?
I think that was the case before they removed ganking from alpha characters. It was actually a common thing to create alpha accounts and inject them into Catalyst to mainly hunt newer players and low value targets. But as they removed that from them, it was fixed. And I think it's also against the policy to create throwaway alts for ganking. Like I remember some comments from game masters like back in 2014 where they said like, hey, creating new alts only to gank them until the security status is too low, then recycle them, create the next one is actually not allowed. Like if people do then they would break the rules if they inject into fresh characters, gank them until security is too low, and then do it over and over again.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that. I think that we would have to look into it, but I think you might be right that people aren't allowed to just biomass and remake. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, it looks like chat is out of questions. Do you have anything else that you would like to talk about before we end the interview?
I think what I can mention is my CSM forum post that there I have more stuff like that as well. And there are also links to the posts about the proving rounds. Like 2 of them are already over 4 years old. It's about the old one that was removed in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. I have also a video link for players that don't know what the arenas were, because it's already nearly 2 years since the last events, and many people started playing after that event and don't know what it is, but we still have the UI for that in game, and the filaments are still in game, so that they can find out what exactly this is.
Awesome. So, my last question to you is what other candidates would you like to see elected alongside you?
That would be Dutch Gunner and anyone else that would like to see the arena return to the game.
Cool. Then, aside from your forum thread, is there any place else that people can carry on the conversation with you?
Yeah, that would be my Twitch, YouTube, and my Discord channel. That's all linked in my CSM forum post.
Okay,
And of
perfect.
course, that forum thread also.
Perfect. I will get all those links in the description of this video when it goes up on YouTube. And what else was it? Oh, do you answer your in-game mail?
Yes, I do. But it depends how many there are. Like if there are like hundreds of mails at the time, then I might not be able to answer all. But if there are only a few, then I can, of course.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. Best of luck in your campaign. Voting starts, I think, on Wednesday. So, yeah, best of luck.
Thanks. And thanks for that I was able to be here. It was a pleasure.
It was absolutely my pleasure. So, thank you so much. Twitch stream, I will be back in a moment.